welcome once again to Real Relationships here at the Bridge Church. I just want to take a moment and say thank you so much for allowing us to come into your home, to come into your phone, to come into whatever device you're watching on, just to say, hey, we love you, thank you for tuning in. And we just want to give you some practical tips about real relationships. So thank you so much for being here and being a part of these. As you can tell, I am here by myself. My wife is doing some schoolwork. She's got a couple of major tests due this week. So unfortunately, you only get me. Next week, it'll be both of us and you'll get to see and hear my better half. But that's why she isn't here. And the reason she isn't here is because she has a priority right now of going through school. Outside of being a full-time mom, being a full-time employee with one of the local cities here, she's also serving at the church, but she's also a student, and she is having to prioritize her time and her energy in so many different things in so many different ways to make sure that everything that needs the best of her is getting the best of her. And that's what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about why relationships must be prioritized. Prioritized relationships is one of the most important things you can do, whether you're single, whether you're married, whether it's your children, no matter what it is. Now, some of the principles we're getting is coming from this book here, The 4 Laws of Love by Jimmy Evans. If you have not read it, I highly suggest it. It's one of the books Tara and I are reading through this year, and it's so very important because I honestly believe this. What you do in life is not nearly as important as who you do it with. Who you choose to do life with, whether it's your friends, your co-workers, your children. You don't really get to choose your children, but the way that you rear your children is important. Who you do life with is more important than what you do in life, because the people that are around you influence you. The people that are around you change you, and they mold you, and they give you a different perspective. So it's very important who you do life with. And I want to talk about how to prioritize the right relationships based off of this book and based off of some experiences that I've had in my life. Now, first and foremost, this goes without saying, the most important relationship that you will ever have is your personal relationship with Jesus Christ. That is simply the most important one. Jesus deserves the best of your time, the best of your attitude, the best of your resources. Jesus deserves your very, very best. But outside of Jesus, let's talk about the next few relationships in the order that they should be prioritized. And I promise you this, one of the most disheartening facts that I read is that the church's divorce rate is just as high, if not higher, than that of people that don't go to church. And that just ought not be, because our God created relationships. Our God is built on relationships. Our life is surrounded by relationships. So as Christians, we should do relationships better than anyone. So our marriages should be the best. Our kids should be the best. Everything we should do in relationships should be at a higher standard because of the God that we serve. Now, I know some of you may be watching and say, well, Drew, I'm not married. That's okay. We can still talk about the priorities and the way that they need to fall. Just skip the one that says spouse. But first and foremost is this, it's God. The second most important relationship in your life should be your spouse. And this may come as a shock to you, but the number 3 one is your children. Notice that your children come after your spouse. I think so many relationships get broken when people start putting their children above their spouse because, well, let's be honest, and especially at a young age, they are needy. They need us in all hours of the night. The last few nights, my 2-year-old's been up coughing. So it's caused some sleepless nights in our house, and it's caused us to have to renegotiate some things in our life for this week. He's been coughing. Tara's got the test coming up. So some priorities the ultimate priorities have not shifted, but what has shifted is the timing of some of these priorities this week. Not overall, but just this week. Because what you have to realize is you only have your children for 18 years, roughly, unless they go to college and move back in with you. But you only have your children for 18 years. What happens when you have invested 18 years of your life into your children, and now you're an empty nester and it's you and your spouse, and you almost have to learn each other all over again? It's not healthy. So it's very important that you realize, that your spouse realizes, and even that your children realize, you're not number one in my life. You are not number two in my life. You are number three. We had that discussion with our 8-year-old Blaine recently. He said, who do you love more, me or mommy? And I told him, I said, son, it's different, but I love mommy a little bit more, because if I show you how to love your wife, if I show you how to be a man, and I show you how to do things in proper order, you will be better for it. And he sat back and he looked at me. He said, I'm not happy I'm not first, but I understand. Because it was very important for me to tell him, even at a young age, that, hey, I only have you for a little while to mold you, but after you're gone, I still have your mom. So outside of God, your spouse, and your children, the next thing according to the book and even in our lives is this: it should be your church relationships, your family and your friends inside of your church community. Because once again, who you do life with is more important than what you do in life. So if your closest friends are outside of a Christian culture, you will be getting some insight and some voices that you don't need. I'm not telling you to shun them, but I'm telling you they should not be part of that inner circle. It should be people that are like-minded in the same faith as you. After church is then extended family and friends. Outside of family and friends, it goes to your work and then your hobbies. This is the proper order. And in fact, I'll give it to you. Genesis 2:24 says this: a man shall leave his father and his mother, and he shall cleave to his wife. That word leave does not mean disrespect everybody else. It does not mean I no longer respect my family. I no longer respect what they say. It means this: my priorities have shifted now from my parents being my main priority to my spouse being my main priority. To cleave together, to join together, to be united together as one. So as I close, how do we prioritize these things? How do we make sure God is first, spouse is second, children, church, extended family and friends, and work and hobbies and so on? What are the pragmatic steps? What are the real steps that we can take? Number one, the very best of your relationships should get the very best of you. God should get the very best of you. If you're good first thing in the morning, God should get you first thing in the morning. If you're a little bit more of a late owl like I am, God should get you at your best time. Once you've had your time with God, your spouse deserves your best time. Your spouse deserves your best energy. Your spouse deserves your best resources. It's one of the most important things to realize that priorities is not just writing a list and saying, look, you're right below God. It's actually showing them. We show them by prioritizing them with our time, with our energy, with our resources, understanding them, quality time together, long walks or talks or whatever it takes for you and your spouse. They give us instruction in the books that one thing you should do is have a date night as often as possible, weekly if possible. If you have kids and you can afford a sitter, do it weekly as much as possible, because you have to prioritize the most important relationship outside of God that you have here on earth, and that's your spouse. So we do that by giving them the very best of our time, the very best of our energy, and the very best of our resources. When we put our relationships in priority, it says this right here: if you'll do these 4 laws, it says that every marriage is guaranteed to succeed. That's what the church should look like. That's what relationship statuses should look like inside the church. Not just together, but striving to be better and thriving no matter what comes our way, because our priorities are right. And if we put God first and our spouse and then our children and then our church and then so on and so forth, you will see your life and your relationships flourish to new heights and go to new levels. Can I pray with you? Father, I thank you right now for each and every person that's watching this broadcast. God, whether they see it now or whether they see it 6 months from now, it doesn't matter. But Father, I want to just pray right now that you would give them instruction, that you would give them boldness, that you would give them wisdom, that you would open up their eyes and let them see what the proper priorities should be in their life. God, if there's anything that's out of order when it comes to their priorities, help them to make the decisions to get it back in order, because you are a God of order. And this is the order that you've instructed us from your word that should be every day in our lives. Proper priorities in our relationships. We thank you, we praise you in Jesus' name. Hey, thank you one more time for jumping on here and allowing us just to share a few minutes with you about real relationships.